Okay, good morning, and welcome to the Mic Drop podcast. My name's Larry Achiampong. I'm an artist, and today we'll be talking a little bit about Fiesta Gates' current solo show at Tate Gallery in Liverpool, titled Amalgam. And with me joining today, we'll also be talking with Margarita, Kevin, and also Bella. So welcome, guys, and just before we get into talking about the nitty-gritty of the show, we come together through two organisations, Many Hands, One Heart, and also Heart of Glass, so many thanks to those organisations. So before we get into discussing the show, I thought I'd kind of like mention a bit of an introduction for people who perhaps haven't seen the show, of which I highly personally recommend. The exhibition is created by artist Fiesta Gates, who was born in 1973. He's one of the world's most influential artists. I personally agree on that as well. Fiesta Gates' show Amalgam explores the complex and interweaving issues of race, territory and equality in the United States. The exhibition takes the history of Malaga as its point of departure. During the 19th century, this small island off the coast of Maine in the United States was home to an ethnically mixed community in 1912. On the borders of the state governor, Malaga's inhabitants were forcibly removed to the mainland. They were offered no housing, jobs, or support. Now, having made that kind of introduction, I know there's quite a lot going on in the show, and also for yourselves, this is probably the first time talking about art within this kind of context, even for me actually, in terms of reviewing the show. I guess I wanted to kind of start off on a kind of like point by point basis with each of you individually, what you kind of thought of the show, what you thought of, what you saw or what you experienced. Can I start with you, Margarita?
Okay. All right. Experience, it was a
So what did you think about what you saw? Was there anything perhaps that kind of really hit you when you went into the show, or anything that you perhaps took away that had a lasting kind of memory for you?
Yeah, the racist though. There was a racist in that. What you call it? The thing they used to put on people's face and.
What? Would you say, what are you talking about, the masks?
Yeah, the mask, they used to put mask on people's face and make them as a slave.
Right, okay, yeah, of course. So I think it's within some of the earlier rooms on the left as you go into the show, and there's also the iron brands that are within the encased kind of frames. Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. What feelings did they bring up for you when you saw those artifacts?
My goodness. It's make me cry, and it just was make me cry. I was not happy about that. When the white people used to do to black people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you, Marguerite, in that for me, I felt that the show was highly kind of like emotively charged. The thing that I noticed straight off was actually the iron brands.
Yeah, iron brand.
Yeah, that you would likely place on animals, and in that kind of understanding that relationship or association of Africans, of human beings as animals, as cattle, as product, and kind of being placed face to face with that. It really brought up like tremendous kind of feelings for me of anger, but also considering how, although slavery was the transatlantic slave trade was something that happened hundreds of years ago, the legacy of that still kind of is embedded within plenty of societies, especially even Liverpool, which was a port city itself, and how that affects people today. Was there anything else for you that kind of jumped out, or that you enjoyed, or maybe you found perhaps even unsettling?
I was not enjoying, but because I was not happy about to see that was using to our people though. It just make me feel like it make me feel like what do you call it?
It's okay. Maybe we can take a bit of time, and you can come back to if how you felt about that. Kevin, is there anything perhaps for you that you took away from the show, the experience that you had?
That was the first time I heard about Malaga in United States, because I thought Malaga is in Spain. There's Malaga in Spain. But
Yes.
That was the first time, and the exhibition, I noticed a lot of segregation, during that period. The black people were forbidden to marry white ladies. There was no interracial marriage then. It was something that didn't happen during that period. But I saw one thing that intrigued me was I saw a couple in one of the movies that I was watching. A couple, a white guy who married a black lady. Despite the prohibition, the law, the challenges they were facing, he still stood by his decision to marry a black lady, and they had a family. A lovely
I think
family.
you're talking about the Dance of Malaga video installation, right? Yeah. And did you because I'll be honest, like when I go to see exhibitions, if I find that a work is too long, like in terms of the video, I kind of duck out like straight away. I think I stayed for like 2 loops, but did you stay from the beginning to the end, and why was that, if that was the case for you?
I think I stood there from the beginning, and that was why I couldn't leave, because I was drawn by it. I wanted to know what was going on, and I was intrigued, and I was interested to know, and it was really fascinating. So,
I think one of the things that I took away from the film was the incredible ability to juxtapose sounds and visuals and quotes, both historical and contemporary, whilst also generating original, sounds and visuals. So, you had the scenes where Fiesta Gates' kind of, I guess, musical group, the Monks, are playing music. You have one of them that are singing, and then all of a sudden that jumps straight into a certain point of history in relation to Malaga, or even that of the transatlantic slave trade, which I found to be quite powerful. When an artist can bring about questions of the past and relate them to what's happening in the now, that can become like a really interesting kind of soup of ideas, which I think came off pretty well. Bella, what did you think of the show, or is there anything in particular for you that stood out in any kind of way, shape, or form?
To be honest, I don't really like to see like the history, especially when it deals with the sufferings of human beings. What I saw particularly that stood out for me Because when I saw that metal bar, in my mind, I thought it was something that was used to, like maybe just what do you call, stamp the kettles to show that they belong to someone. I didn't know that it was used for the human beings. And when I heard that it was used on human beings, I mean, my heart just sank. I mean, I wasn't there at that time. I don't even know how, I can't even pretend to feel or know how those people were feeling at that time. But the pain I felt inside, it was just like somebody just took something and just stabbed me in the heart. It's just terrible. And I just don't understand what would have made human beings to turn against each other, to just treat each other like they are not the same or they are not equal.
Yeah.
It was just a sad thing to see. And to know that I'm living in Liverpool now, but Liverpool was one of the first port for people to be transported to wherever they were going, or things to be transported to. It's just amazing that, some of these things, you never know that you can someday meet with them. But here I am, I'm in Liverpool.
Yeah, I think, again, coming back to that, what I felt was important in what that show was able to do was to open up conversation around something that I personally feel doesn't get to be spoken about that much of. Or if it does, you have these kind of skewed points of view within, history books or even the curricula. If I think about my own personal history of education, primary school and secondary school, I remember slavery being spoken about as a trade in which all people benefited, and that certainly was not the case. Kevin, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is that, recently, it's like the history of black people and slave trade has been somehow being eroded or washed away. You don't see it taught in the schools, but you have like Holocaust, World War, all those things remembering every year, but you don't see the Europeans or American, celebrate black history or slavery, like they do during Holocaust.
Yeah,
I think they're trying to erase the memory of black history from,
Bella?
I personally, Kevin, would not agree with it to be taught, because just from what happened to me when I went to watch to the cinema, to the art gallery, it left me with so much pain. I don't understand if it would be a good thing for for young kids to watch that.
It is a good thing for young black kids to know their history, just like the Jews know the history of Holocaust. Even a million years today, you will be hearing or see things about Holocaust. Holocaust was horrible, just like slavery was horrible. So they still keep talking about Holocaust. I think they should teach about slavery or slave trade in schools, so that even the young black children will know their history. Some kids, black kids now, they don't know much about black history. They don't. If you ask them about slave trade or some black heroes, Martin Luther King and all those, they don't know who they are. So I think it should be taught in schools, so that people know, yes, this thing really happened, just like World War I don't know if you've watched 19. What's the name of that film? Is it
1917.
1917. That's even telling children this is what happened in this time. We fought war. I think they should,
I guess one of the things that I even find interesting or peculiar about, even discussions regarding the World War is how, again, history is kind of bent in the direction or the favour of that of, the white elite. If you look at the history of, the World Wars, if you dig deep enough, those wars they were referred to as the Colonial Wars.
Yeah.
Various nations, the likes of Germany, the UK, France, and so on, they argued about which piece of pie, and this pie in which we're talking about is that of the African continent, would be divided up. Yeah. Even the Germans, they did experiments on Africans before the Holocaust even took place as well. And again, that kind of history, it doesn't really get spoken about, and you have to kind of dig deep to try and find these things. I guess where I personally stand on it is I do think that it's important that the multitudes and the complexities of history are spoken about or made available, because without understanding history, these problems repeat themselves. Mm-hmm. And even looking at the legacy of slavery, or even the pseudoscience related to racism, is entirely made up. Race doesn't actually exist. It's something that white Europeans created for a pseudoscience of which we live underneath today. Even issues regarding, asylum seeking, I personally feel that they have a strong relationship and connection to them, coming from, parents whom came to this country with no papers whatsoever. You can make those links with those details and so on. And so I think as difficult as those aspects of history they are to take in, I think they're very necessary for people to know about, and to also bridge an understanding as to the types of behaviour that we have today, even with regards to like Brexit, for example, which I won't dig into too deep, but I think again there are connections with all of these things. Margarita, what do you think about that? Any point of what was said there? I know I said quite a lot.
Yeah, I needed the history need to teach in school, because now our kids, our black kids, they think they are white. They are white now. They think they are white kids now. They don't even appreciate their mothers. When they with the white kids, they just behave like the white people. They need to teach the history in a school about how the people treat us in 19 something there.
So would you say like there's a sense of identity that is being lost for young black kids and kids of colour?
Yeah.
How about the rest of you? What do you think about that?
It's not only black people, the Asians, the other ethnic groups, apart from, some of them came, and they not that they came willingly, they were forced to come and fight the war, like the Gurkhas, black Africans, Kenyans, Nigerians, all those Africans. They were taken from their countries to come and fight for Europe. But you don't hear them mentioned. You don't hear them celebrated. They only paint black people or Asians in a color that is degrading. They don't praise them. They don't recognize them for what they did. Look at what is happening now. The Windrush scandal, something like that. Mm-hmm. These were people that were brought when they were needed. They were needed, but they came and gave all they had, their best, and worked hard, but they were being treated like a dog. They were not given papers to live like a normal British people, which they are. Something like that shouldn't happen. You can't bring people to come and help you do something. After helping you, you relegate them to the background and forget about them. They should be celebrated. I think the way they are doing, they are treating other people who are not English or white, it's ridiculous. It's not something that should be done.
I think that really resonates with me personally. Anything anybody else has to say before we finish?
I mean, I don't know personally what could be done to change this perception of people who might otherwise think of other people as being less or not worthy. I think both black people and white people, regardless of what happened in the history, both of us should come together and then agree on one thing and one thing only, that we are both human beings, regardless of whether in the past our ancestors treated each other differently. At this moment, we are living in a different era, and if there's any how to the human being can come together and know and accept each other as human beings, I think the world can be better.
I think
the
wound can only be healed when you teach people about other people, so that they respect other people's culture, other people's belief. If you teach them about other people, they will be able to see those people as human beings. I believe that if you teach even the white children, if you teach them about, they are all human beings, they have feelings. If you teach them about history, slavery, they will see that the black people were treated without respect. They were treated not well. There was inhumane treatment that were meted on the black people. They will be able to see black people in this, they put themselves in the same shoe. But when you don't teach them that, they will not know what people went through. They will not have the feelings that these people suffered. If I was in their shoe, how will I feel?
Yeah, I do wonder. I do wonder what empathy can actually do, because again, we talk about. So here's the interesting thing, right? When racism is discussed, sometimes white people talk about reverse racism, but the thing is, if you look at the system of racism, it was created by white Europeans. It was not created by anybody else. It's a very particular system. Even the use of the likes of the Bible was placed within places in the African continent, and that's just that continent alone, right? Other places as well, where people were told that they are inferior because of this particular scripture and so on. So I certainly agree, until there's a reckoning or even understanding, which I don't think we've even got to, then how can there even be a point of healing? And that's even talking before the issue or the question of economics, because these various countries, cultures have been wiped off, eradicated, and with that their economies crushed as well, which I would argue has led to so many of the problems that we have today, where people are impoverished as a result of those histories that have created industry and capitalized upon them through pillaging and so on. I'm really sorry, but we're going to have to cut it there as we're running a bit over. But I want to thank Bella, Kevin and Margarita for their time. And you've been listening to the Mic Drop podcast. And my name is Larry Achiampong. Thank you very much.